Hi, I'm Marilyn Morningstar. I'm here today to just talk to you a little bit about my bio. I haven't done that except in some interviews. Just to let kind of like who I am, what I've been about my whole life. So I was raised in Hollywood. I went to Hollywood High School. And after that, I moved to Washington State for a couple of years. And then I moved back to Hollywood. And even though I did actually major in drama in school, I couldn't get into the industry. I ended up moving to Las Vegas and working as a food waitress and then working as a cocktail waitress. And then eventually I really got into the acrylic nail business because my mother and I actually started that business on a national scale. Prior to that, it was pretty much a Beverly Hills thing that they did for the stars. I'm the one that went around the country teaching sculptured nails. You might remember the Goddess Company if you're in that industry. I owned that and started that business. And yeah, so I did that for a number of years. I got slammed by the FDA because um, it happens to be that coincidentally, there was a booth next to our booth in a national show, a beauty show, where we were with three other small companies that had shot up after us. And we were all showing our nail products and instructions and stuff. And then in comes the FDA with this empty booth next to us that was empty the whole time. So this is like the first or second day, I can't remember, of the show. And the FDA walks up to our booth and goes, "Oh, we're shutting you down because you're using this particular kind of liquid for your acrylic, and that's illegal, and la 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 la." And so they shut our booth down. So all that expense was down the toilet. I got out of that industry for about 2 years, I guess, 2 or 3 years, because I was really shocked by the power of the FDA to just basically and I can tell you which pharmaceutical company, but I won't just for in case I don't want to get sued. But there's a pharmaceutical company that opened in the empty booth next to me. Yeah, that they opened up and they started selling the very next day. Had a huge signs, it wasn't something instant and on the spot. This was a planned situation. And the three of us got shut down. The three booths that were doing nails got shut down. And only the one huge, gigantic pharmaceutical company had a booth for acrylic nails at that show. So that's why I kind of got out of it for a while. I was like, you can't fight City Hall, blah, blah, blah. Well, about a couple, 2 or 3 years later, I thought, well, this is really sick because I'm the one that started this on a small scale for beauty salons to be able to offer this as a service within their salon. Other than that, like I said, it was just a Beverly Hills thing for the stars. And then when I went in a beauty supply one day, I saw that there was a lot of other products that had hit the market that were just my exact products, maybe with a different liquid or whatever, and that they all seemed to be doing well. So I ended up getting back in that business, traveling all around the United States, teaching people how to do nails. So my company, the Goddess Company, was basically credited for being the first company to introduce acrylic nails. And then I started a show business in that industry called Goddess Shows Convention. So they were our first nail shows, nail only, for the trade show for the industry. And then they went into, at the very end, before I sold, I was going to introduce and did introduce a little bit in that last show or two, beauty products. So I was realizing what was happening in the industry is, again, this is what happens, right? The small guy always gets slammed. I found out that, the beauty supplies, the big chains were making these deals with companies and buying up the rights to sell their product in their stores only. And so I was pretty disenchanted with that as well. And I just thought this is all just a bunch of politics and money and corruption and, whatever. And I did end up having those 6 shows a year. So I had 2 in New York, 2 in Las Vegas, and then 1 in Detroit and 1 in Hawaii. Those were my 6 shows the goddess shows that I produced every year for a number of years. And then I ended up selling that business. And after that, I sold off my nationwide nail supply business. I sold off my franchise business because I had franchised some nail salon, quote, supply combination stores. And then I sold off my product companies. So basically, that's my history as a corporate CEO, you might say, from a fairly large company, meaning I had like 20, 25 employees. That's large for me anyway. And then once I sold, I said, well, I can go back to that book that I was writing when I was 22 years old. And that had always been really what I wanted to do anyway. I loved that business only because I really enjoyed some of the creativity part of it, some of the marketing and that kind of thing. I really didn't like the selling aspect, sort of like the book industry. I really wish I could just publish the book and not have to be the marketer and promotion person and do all these things myself. But as it turns out, in the new publishing era of self-publishing, you can either publish on Amazon and do it yourself, or you can send out query letters and wait 6 months. And if they don't answer you, they don't want you. And they want the exclusive for that 6 months. So, and if they're a good agent or publisher. So that doesn't, I need like 20 lifetimes for that to happen. So after that, I started, once I sold that company, the show businesses, the 6 shows, I went to work as a consultant for a while for that company. And so after that, my 3 years of non-compete agreement was up. And I decided to start doing some other shows just because in the meantime, I got a divorce and lost half my money. So I had, Neil wasn't going to last me a lifetime. So I started some other shows, the Women's Expos, Family Expos, and eventually I got into the Money Expos, which you may know as my competition was the Money Show. And I was really the only competition that they had. I planned 6 shows a year in all the richest communities in the United States. And these shows were quite substantial because they had all of the big financial industries taking, between 1 to 4 booths and making a big splash for the local investors. And so that was what that was about. So I had those 6 planned and they were going very, very well. And my very, very, very first show that I produced was 1 week after 9/11. Yes. So no one could get on a plane. Exhibitors couldn't show up. Their goods couldn't be shipped on planes. It ended up being a pretty situation that wasn't a pretty picture at all. So sadly, I just had a spam call while I was recording this for you. So hopefully you didn't just see a big white spot in the middle of the recording. Anyway, yeah, so that was kind of the situation. And then after that, I decided to just focus on the book. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I sent it to Doubleday, and then this was my original book, Neon Gods, and then Doubleday asked me to see it, and I was like, yay! And then I found out that when they sent it back to me a few weeks later, that they were like, too many words, too many story threads, you need to pick your story and write about your story, not just have all these stories intertwined and have this big long book and you're a nobody and we don't know you and you have no name. And so it kind of went like that. And that's how I kind of decided to go traveling after that for about 10 years because I was really disheartened. By that time, I had spent about, at that time, I had spent about 3 years on the book, on the research, and I later ended up spending another 5 years, so that was like 8 years altogether on the book. And then when I didn't get, I kept getting rejections, of course, telling me a couple things. One is it was a World War story and they were a dime a dozen and nobody was even going to open it and look at it because it was just like, no, we're not taking any more World War II stories. They're just, passe and all this stuff. Well, it turns out over the 10 years since, um, historical fiction in that genre happens to be the most popular genre of books that sell today. So anyway, it's interesting because history is an interesting thing to read about, and especially when you can put yourself in the shoes of the actual characters. I will say that my book was a lot longer, and I did break it down into 5 books. And this is the character chronologically, the mother of my first character in Neon Gods. And so you do get a very fast read. So because when I had to break it down, I also hired a pace editor to teach me how to pace it so that it's a very extremely page turning type of a read, even though historical fiction isn't known for being page turners. This one is. So that's what I'm getting from all the readers. And of course, that was the plan, wasn't it? Anyway, I'm going to also today read you one of my poems, which you can find some of my poetry and photography that I did when I was traveling. Although I have to admit, I haven't updated this site in a long time at www.marilynmorningstar.com. But anyway, I'm just going to read you one that's out of there that has kind of something to do with, I guess, who I am and the way I feel about life. So I'm going to be doing that on the next video and just do it as a standalone video. So this is kind of my little short bio so you can know who I am. And then we'll try to throw in some, maybe in between these readings, because I'm going to be reading chapter 3 today, in between the readings to try to throw in some different types of things that make it a little bit more interesting than just going from chapter to chapter. So I'm doing the commentaries after the chapters. I'll probably do some poetry readings. I'll do some interviews. I'll have reader interviews and different things. So you can just get a jumble of different, things that are, or if you don't want to listen to any of them, you can just jump because they're all, I'm writing the titles of everything in there. So you can go from just the reading to the reading to the reading if you want to do that as well. But this at least gives you some variety. So anyway, thank you so much for looking at my video and reading my book. I really appreciate it. And if you know any filmmakers that might be interested in a very excellent book about World War II and a love story between an SS officer and a Jewish girl from the Warsaw Ghetto, please send them my way. I would be much, much appreciating that. Okay, thank you so much, and I'll see you in a bit. Bye.